Hey guys, today I have another disassembly video for you, and this is of a Sig MPX, and this is an mpx-k that, to my knowledge, is the most up-to-date one in the series currently. Now, one note starting out on the MPX is Sig has a really bad history of introducing generational changes without introducing a new generation of firearms, so there may be some differences between your MPX and mine depending on when yours was made. So just keep that in mind, but let's go ahead and get into it, check out the mechanics and how it disassembles. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and start things off by popping out our MCX magazine. So these are allegedly made by Lancer, the old generation, incredibly expensive. So as far as disassembly goes, if you've disassembled an AR-15, you can disassemble an MCX for the most part. So we'll go ahead and pop out the rear push pin here. Of course, this is going to be captive, so it's not going to pop out at all. And we can go ahead and hinge open our upper and lower receiver. I'm going to go ahead and pop out the front pin too, so we can go ahead and separate them entirely. Now, just taking a look at the lower receiver, it's going to be very AR-15-like, and a lot of AR-15 parts will actually work in this, primarily going to be your trigger group, although there are some things to consider there. So this is a Timney MPX trigger, and one important part in here is this little steel plate here. So 9mm AR-15s as well as the MPX are known for having very high bolt velocity, and that metal plate there is actually meant to protect your disconnector. So with a standard AR-15 trigger group, the hammer is going to be coming back so quickly that it can actually damage your disconnector. So the way that they figured out a way around that to protect it is to put a metal plate in there to absorb that impact. So MPX specific trigger groups are going to be your best bet on one of these, but they will work with other AR-15 ones as well. Now in the lower receiver, you can see there's also a little pin in there, and that shores up the fit between the upper and lower receiver so you don't have a lot of wobble. And there's also a rubber buffer at the end of travel there. Now we do have a safety selector. I have AXTS ones on mine, and then you could also have our magazine release, a right side bolt release, and no bolt catch on that side, but we have standard AR-15 controls as well as a ambidextrous magazine release on the left side. And that's about all we have to go over on the end plate here. So this is Picatinny, so you can just pop out this screw, pull off this stock, put on whatever stock you want. There's tons of options out there for it. Coming back to the upper receiver, it's going to be just like an AR-15 to get your bolt and carrier out of there. So we'll go ahead and pull back on the charging handle a little bit, pull it out of battery there, and then we can go ahead and slide our bolt carrier group out the back. Disassembling our bolt carrier group is actually going to be different than the current generation of the MCX, the Spear LT, as well as the Virtus, and this is more similar to a Gen 1 MCX. They never updated this, so we'll go ahead and start it out by popping out our firing pin retaining pin, and that's just a standard one there, nothing too crazy going on. And then we're actually going to, well, first of all, let's go ahead and get our firing pin out of there, so we can just pull that straight out the back here so you can see our firing pin as well as the spring here. You're going to want to make sure that spring is on there. We go ahead and set that guy aside, and here comes the most awkward part of the MPX disassembly, getting our springs out. So we're going to go ahead and pull down on one of the recoil springs here, and then you're going to go ahead and slide this plate over, and you're going to release that spring, and you can go ahead and take it off. Now we're going to do the same thing on the other side here. And this end plate here is just going to pop off, and both of our recoil springs are now going to be disassembled here, so we can set those aside. Now these two guide rods will just push out the front here, so we'll take both of those guys out. At which point we can finally get to our cam pin, so we can go ahead and rotate that and pull it out there so you can see it's got a nice little rounded portion at the bottom, but otherwise pretty standard for what you'd expect. And then we'll go ahead and pull the bolt out. The bolt is a 4-lug rotating bolt, and it does actually have a fixed ejector in there, so that is a little nice feature when compared to other options out there. But other than that, it's pretty typical for what you'd expect to see from AR style of rifle. And then here is our bolt carrier. You can see where the piston hits it. Really nothing too crazy going on there though, and that's pretty much all you need to do to disassemble the bolt carrier group. And back up to the upper receiver, we can go ahead and pop out our charging handle. It comes out just like it does on an AR-15. However, this is proprietary to the MPX. The MCX charging handles will not work in this guy, and neither will the AR-15. Now from here, we can go ahead and pop off our handguard, so it will just come straight out. Usually takes a bit of force. And you can see it actually has a pin down here with a little half moon cut out there, and it is being held in by the front pivot pin, so as soon as you pull that pin, you can go ahead and take off your handguard. I'll go ahead and set that guy aside, and we're going to go ahead and pull the barrel as well. You don't need to do this for disassembly, however, I'm going to for this one. And this utilizes 2 T25 Torx screws. So we'll go ahead and pull both of those out. And there is quite a bit of threading in there, so it takes a hot minute to do that. So you can go ahead and pop out both of those, and this screw will come out that side there. And on the other side here, you do have this retaining plate, which is just inside of the receiver there. That'll pop out as well, at which point we can just go ahead and pull the barrel assembly right out the front of the receiver. The MPX uses one of the cutest little short stroke piston systems out there, and to get our piston as well as the gas plug out of there, we'll just take a punch, put it in our gas plug, rotate it around about 180 degrees, at which point it lines up with the grooves right there. Now, pro tip, to get this guy out, it does get incredibly tight if it is a little bit carboned up. So you can just take a hammer, just tap a little bit on the back of the piston, and it'll go ahead and pop out our gas plug here. So you can see it is pretty tight. There are some gas rings up there, so it does seal pretty tightly. And we can go ahead and set that guy aside. To get the piston out, I'm just gonna take a punch and go ahead and hit it from behind here. And then out is going to pop an absolutely tiny piston. And again, we got more gas rings, which is gonna make it pretty tight in there. But that's how you disassemble the gas system. And then coming up here, you can see we just have the port there for the gas system and everything, as well as feed ramps, and then into the chamber there. This is very easy to clean at this point and not a whole lot going on. Now, looking at the fully disassembled upper receiver assembly here, we can see my biggest problem with the MPX, it is incredibly tight in there and difficult to clean. You got a lot of open areas that you need to be able to get to, and then just looking in there, this upper part, you're gonna need some sort of brush to get in there, because just with your hand, there just really isn't room to get up into those recesses. And you can see it in the back here as well, is a very unique receiver shape. Now, looking on the inside, you can actually see we do have a fixed ejector in there. That's a feature I actually like on PCCs. But other than that, there really isn't too much to see on the upper receiver. One thing for that fixed ejector, you can actually remove this plate and it will pop out the side here. So it is replaceable. And then also on the upper receiver back here, there's a couple of steel pins in there, so your charging handle is locking onto steel and not aluminum, so that's good for the longevity of the receiver. All right, guys, and there is a Sig MPX fully disassembled, and as you can see, it is actually fairly complicated with quite a few different parts in it if you disassemble it entirely. So thank you for checking out the video. Please like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and I will see you on the next one.